Welcome to Introduction to Philosophy. My name is Scott Davidson, and it is my pleasure not only to welcome you to this course, but also to give you an overview to the course syllabus. I'm sure that you already know that I'm not able to be with you today to go over the syllabus with you in person. However, I would like to go over the syllabus using this podcast. It's very important that you understand the syllabus well, that you understand all that it contains, the expectations that are outlined within it, and that you know how to use it as a general, overall roadmap for the course. So let's go ahead and jump right in. As you look at the very first page of the syllabus, you'll notice that some general information is presented. So, for example, beyond my name, you'll notice in the gray box that the class schedule is indicated. We meet every Tuesday and Thursday from 10 o'clock until 11:30 in the morning. My office hours are Mondays and Wednesdays, 10:10 till 11:40 a.m., and also by appointment. I realize that those times may not work with everyone's schedule, and so if for any reason you need to meet with me, please don't hesitate to just let me know when is a convenient time. I'm available to meet with you in person in my office in Francis Hall, 224. Recognizing that this class takes place through the Reading Hospital School of Health Sciences, I realize that it may not even be convenient for you to be on campus. As a result, it may be the case that you would like to meet while I am actually on the campus of the Reading Hospital School of Health Sciences. If that is the case, we can meet either before class, as I typically show up about 20 minutes before each class, or we can meet after class. If we can't meet on the campus of the School of Health Sciences, we can also meet by using a program called Zoom. If you wish to pursue that option, just let me know. I'm happy to walk you through it. My office telephone is listed there on the syllabus, but also even more importantly, my email is listed. And if you'll notice, right next to my email, it indicates that my email is actually the preferred method of communication with me. Now, one of the things that I ask for people to do is that whenever they email me, to please include in the subject line, Philosophy 105/AH1. It helps me to be able to organize my emails. You will note that the next section of the syllabus is the course description. This is actually right out of the course catalog for Alvernia University, and it states that this course is a historical introduction to fundamental problems and methods of philosophy based on readings in ancient, medieval, and modern literature. There are several takeaways that I would like to highlight from that course description. First of all, notice that we take a roughly historical methodology. That is, that we are looking at readings from various historical moments in which there are very particular fundamental problems that philosophers are dealing with. The other thing I want to emphasize is if you'll notice that it's based on readings. What that means is that reading is a really important component of this course. You are going to find yourself reading things from primary sources and from secondary sources. I'll talk more about the distinction between primary versus secondary sources in a little bit. The next part of the syllabus contains the humanities mission statement. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this part of the syllabus. However, I do want to highlight one part in particular of the mission statement that relates very specifically to this course. If you'll notice, midway through the paragraph that is presented, the statement indicates that well-educated students of the humanities should be able to read carefully, write skillfully, speak eloquently, and conduct themselves with civility. Now, the reason why I like to highlight this is because I believe that these are skills that really help people to achieve their best in life. And it's within the context of humanities courses. As a matter of fact, it's part of the very tradition of humanities courses where students really cultivate these skills. Philosophy lies at the heart of humanities. As a matter of fact, most humanities courses are considered philosophical in nature. And so I encourage you to consider this course as an opportunity to develop those skills, to be able to read more carefully, write more skillfully, speak more eloquently than perhaps you do already. The next part of the syllabus contains the course objectives. You'll notice that the first course objective is that you will be able to critically read and discuss selected works of some of the great philosophers, classical to postmodern. This is one of the very exciting course objectives actually, because you will actually become versant in some of the ideas that were put forth centuries and centuries ago, all the way up to the present time by great thinkers. The second objective relates to the first because here you will be able to use the language, the terms, and the definitions of philosophy in class discussions and in written work. And you'll also be using the use of inclusive language, which I will talk about a little bit later because it's part of the format for written work. The third objective is that you will be able to apply the methods of philosophy. See, there's a particular way of thinking with philosophy that actually helps people to think through different matters. For this objective, notice specifically that it relates to matters of problems in contemporary life and in society. You'll be able to apply these methods in class discussions. The final objective on that first page is to participate in philosophical discussions and debates in class. You'll notice that discussion and debate in class is very, very important. So being able to use some of the ideas that you're reading about, that you're thinking about, and actually bring those to bear into discussions that are in the class, boy, I'll tell you what, that's really where philosophy happens. That's where it really kind of comes alive. Let me just add one more idea to that. If you'll notice that we are actually looking at problems in contemporary life and society, what that should tell you is that philosophy is incredibly relevant to what is actually happening in our world. This is not one of those courses where you might be studying something and begin thinking, what does this have to do with anything else? Why am I actually in fact studying this? When you're studying philosophy, you're studying thinking. You're studying the never-ending attempt to try to think clearly, most rationally, in the most constructive way. And so I just kind of go back to something that I think is really important. Part of what makes philosophy really come alive is when people are able to engage in discussions that are fruitful, where they're able to clarify their ideas, where they're able to actually not only think clearly, but where they can actually help other people to think more clearly. If all people in society studied philosophy, mark my words, we would have a much, much, much better society. This is why you happen to have a teacher who is very passionate about teaching this course. The objectives on page 2 begin with the objective that states that you will be able to formulate philosophical arguments in class and online and test the validity and logic of them. So when that important word test is used, I want you to think about that for a moment, just because in many ways what this course invites you to do is to really test out your own ways of thinking. And so I want you to be able to very bravely put forth different arguments and actually test them for their validity using some of the principles that we're talking about during especially the first part of the course. The next objective states that you will prepare a proposal, an annotated bibliography, and a research essay. The details for that particular project will be provided during the third week of the course. The next objective states that you will read primary and secondary sources in depth for a research essay. So let me go ahead and specify what is meant by a primary versus a secondary source. A primary source is a source that actually comes directly from a given author. An example of that is when you look at your textbook, you'll notice that you have many texts that are actually provided from the actual philosophers. So an example would be the text that is in your book by David Hume or by Immanuel Kant. But you'll notice that there is also a secondary source in your text, and that is essentially the commentary that is given by Gary Kessler, where he writes about what that philosopher was saying. So rule of thumb, primary source is directly from the horse's mouth, so directly from the given philosopher. Secondary source is written by somebody else who is trying to explain her or his ideas. You will use primary and secondary sources for your final research essay, and you will choose a particular philosophical issue. Given the method for this research essay, you'll actually have that topic approved. The final course objective is to complete a midterm examination and a final examination. Both of those will actually, in fact, take place online, that is on Blackboard. The next part of the syllabus indicates that the textbook is Voices of Wisdom, 8th edition by Gary Kessler. Please notice that it is 8th edition. There are many editions out there, obviously. As a matter of fact, there's a newest 9th edition that just came out last year. The edition that we are using is the 8th edition. That is definitely the edition that you will want. That textbook could be obtained from the Alvernia University bookstore, or it can be obtained from other vendors, frankly, for less money. I also include on that page the Alvernia University grading scale. That grading scale is a little bit different than the grading scale that is used for the Reading Hospital School of Health Sciences, but it does help to give you a sense as to where your grade essentially falls whenever I give a grade for different assignments. Finally, a part of the syllabus that I think most people tend to kind of jump towards because they tend to ask themselves how much work is going to be required in this course. So they'll jump to the section that essentially deals with the course requirements and grade computation. You'll notice that that section begins with a point that says that there are no make-up assignments, quizzes, or exams unless under dire circumstances. Please make a note of that. I am happy to work with people if some kind of extenuating circumstance occurs. However, I do need some kind of documentation that actually shows that, in fact, some extenuating circumstance did occur. Typically, I expect people to hand in their assignments on time and to be able to take whatever quizzes and exams have been administered within the time frame that is expected. So, to understand how grades are determined in the course, you need only to look at the scale that is identified on page 2 of the syllabus. Notice that everything is carefully delineated in that scale. First of all, notice that participation, short writing assignments, and quizzes account for 25% of the overall course grade. So that's a pretty big chunk of the overall course grade. That occurs for several reasons. First of all, active participation in the course, especially in a philosophy course. I don't know so much about other courses, but gosh, in a philosophy course, that's really essential. What that means is that a person has done the readings, that they're familiar with the ideas that we are discussing, that they've really spent some time and investment in the learning process, so that when they show up to class, they're not sitting in class passively, just basically taking in material that an instructor puts forth to them, but instead they're actively engaging it. They're able to talk about it, they're able to answer questions about it, they're able to respond to the instructor as the instructor is going through particular ideas. So participation is really important. In addition to participation, or maybe I should say as one of the ways that a person participates in the course, there are short writing assignments. These are very brief. They're essentially reactions to particular material. And then there are little quizzes, but those quizzes are given in a slightly different way. So some of those quizzes might be available on Blackboard, but some of those quizzes are actually questions that I will ask just about every class. I will actually ask particular questions during the course of a lecture. What that looks like is you will be using a program called Pear Deck, and it will be essential that you have a device that you bring to every class, that device is fully charged so that you can use it throughout the class, and that you can respond in real time to particular questions that I ask during the course of a lecture or a class discussion. The use of this means of participation is absolutely essential. It is not possible to show up at a class without a device or a device that doesn't work and actually get points for that class. So given that this is worth 25% of the overall course grade, I just want to underscore it's very essential that you have a device, preferably a laptop, if not maybe a tablet, and perhaps the worst case scenario is a phone, only because it has such a small screen. But that you bring that to every class, that it is completely charged, and that you are actually able to use that. Notice, please, that there is a footnote for that column. The footnote refers you to the very next page under the category called Format of Course. So whenever you are wondering about how participation, short writing assignments, and quizzes are calculated, just look at that section called Format of Course and look at the expectations that are outlined therein. The next areas of the grading scale include the writing assignment, which is in purple, and that consists of 4 different parts that I will talk about during the 3rd week of the course. The final aspects of grade calculation will be using a midterm examination, which will be delivered on Thursday, February the 23rd during class time on Blackboard, and the final exam, which will be administered on Thursday, April the 20th during class time. If you are ever wondering about your grade in the course, just refer to the scale that is provided here. This course uses percentages to calculate the overall course grade in accord with the categories that are provided in the syllabus. If you count up points in Blackboard, that will actually not give you an accurate representation of your course grade. That will give you a sense of where you are percentage-wise, particularly when you look at your participation scores, which will be recorded in Blackboard on a regular basis. But that will not actually give you your overall course grade, because after all, I am using the percentages that are identified in the syllabus. I'm not using accumulated points in Blackboard. I hope this makes sense. Mainly I'm going through this just because I find that at the end of the semester sometimes people are confused because they will have added up all of the points that they accumulated in Blackboard and they believe that that's the grade that they should receive, and that is not the way this course works. This course works by using the syllabus. That's your official contract, and it is essentially a calculation using those percentages that gives you your overall course grade. If you have any need to clarify this with me, of course, please don't hesitate to let me know. But please do so before the end of the course. I am going to go through the remaining part of the syllabus somewhat quickly. Please notice on page 3 that there is the format of course, which I referred to previously. It's important to read that carefully. Also, there is the class cancellation policy. If a class does need to be canceled because of inclement weather, you can expect to see an alert posted on Blackboard, as well as an email that is sent to your Alvernia University email account. The third item on this page, and something that I just want to highlight, is the Alvernia University Academic Honesty Policy. In the writing projects, it is utterly, absolutely, completely essential that you ensure that you give credit where credit is due. What that means is that you do not want to take any kind of material from an external source and not give it a proper citation. So if you paraphrase an idea from someone, or if you take a direct quote from an external source, it is extremely important that you cite that properly. Normally, in instances of plagiarism, I believe that people plagiarize because they don't know necessarily how to cite properly. And in those instances, I will typically have a conversation in which I help the person to obtain that skill. I will also refer them to the writing lab. However, there have been occasions throughout the years where I will have somebody actually plagiarize a paper, that is to willfully take someone else's work and to claim that as their own. That kind of willful plagiarism is an act of dishonesty, and I do not tolerate acts of dishonesty. That last line indicates that instances of plagiarism will result in failure of the course regardless of what grades are. And so in acts of willful or intentional dishonesty, I automatically fail the student from the course. I am sure that this will not be a problem in this class. However, I do point it out just to be sure. Page 4 begins with an item called Format for Written Work. This pertains to the formal writing assignment, so it pertains to the essay proposal, the annotated bibliography, the first draft of the research essay, as well as the final draft of the research essay. It may also apply to those individual short writing assignments. Please be sure to look at this very carefully. I will actually talk about this further, particularly when I give the instructions for the first writing assignment. It is a really good idea to return back to this part of the syllabus as you review the drafts for the writings that you submit to me. The next part of the syllabus is the presence and absence policy. You'll notice that it is expected that students participate in every single class. That's the most important thing, because if you miss key parts of the material, especially in a class like this where arguments kind of build one upon the other, you actually end up with gaps in your knowledge. And that gap will show up not only in writing projects, but it will also show up in your performance on quizzes. So it's really important to be present at every class and to be prepared for every class. Things happen in life. And as a result, sometimes a person will miss a class or two. Notice that you are able to miss a couple of classes without it really harming your grade. However, please be aware that if you happen to miss a class, it is your responsibility to obtain notes from a fellow student. Please do not email me asking what we did in class. I am not able to encapsulate an hour and a half of class into an email. What's most important is to confer with your classmates to be sure that any potential gaps in your knowledge are filled in by your discussions with her or him, and that your notes are complete. That is, after all, the responsibility of being a student. Finally, notice there is one item as well that is in bold in that area, and that has to do with text messaging. See, here's the thing with text messaging. Text messaging not only distracts you, but it also distracts people around you from being able to pay good attention to the material that we are discussing and that I'm trying to share with you. So, just a really important sign of maturity is to know when to pay attention on class material and when not to pay attention to something such as texts coming in from friends. All of that can wait. We use technology quite extensively in the classroom, and so it's easy to get distracted. But the sign of maturity and the sign of real professionalism is knowing how not to let that happen. You're paying a lot of money to be sitting in this class. The last thing on earth you want to do is to cheat yourself out of the full experience by allowing yourself to become distracted. Page 5 begins with the Americans with Disabilities Act. If you need any special accommodations, please do not hesitate to let me know. Submit to me a letter from the Disability Services Office as soon as you are able. The second item there is the copyright restriction. Please take note of that, particularly if you are making lots of copies for different course requirements. And then finally, there are the technology requirements. Please pay close attention to that section. Provided in that section of the syllabus is information regarding how you can contact Alvernia University's IT department. There is a 24/7 help desk at the number listed there, 610-927-2008. If you have any issues with accessing a quiz, completing one of the interactive podcasts that I provide during the semester, submitting an assignment, the very first thing for you to do is to contact the Alvernia University Help Desk. You are welcome to email me about any issues you have, especially if you think that it could affect your grade. However, there's very little that I'm typically able to do technically on my end to resolve any kinds of issues that emerge. So the very first thing to do is to contact the Alvernia University Help Desk. Be sure that you also obtain a service ticket number if you do end up calling them. I will ask you for that ticket number in some instances. On page 6, you will notice that there is the General Education Student Learning Outcomes and Assessment. The General Education Student Learning Outcome that we are looking at this year, particularly in this course, is our General Education Student Learning Outcome number 2, which is to demonstrate proficiency in spoken, written, and interpersonal communication. So you are going to notice that during this course there are a smattering of different activities that you'll be participating in which you will actually be demonstrating your own proficiency in the spoken, written, and interpersonal communications area. Some of that information may be used for assessment purposes. What that means is that in a completely confidential way, as a matter of fact, even in an anonymous way, some of the stuff that you write may be looked at by some of our assessors at Alvernia University to ensure that we are actually doing what we say we are doing. That is to say that we in fact are helping you to cultivate the skills of proficiency in spoken, written, and interpersonal communications. The final portion of the syllabus is the tentative course outline reading and writing assignments. I want to mention to you, first of all, it's very important to realize that this outline is in fact tentative. What that means is that there are times when we will actually be getting into some material, we'll have great conversation about it, and that will mean that we end up spending more time on that material and less time on other material. I will always let you know of modifications that happen in the syllabus, but for the most part, what you have here is an outline of everything that we will be treating in the course and when we will be treating it. So this should hopefully be of great assistance to you because you can actually see exactly when we are covering particular topics. You can see what you need to read for that, and then there are even oftentimes indicated when particular things are due. Continue to refer to this section of the syllabus, I would suggest, continuously throughout the course so that you know exactly where we are at and where we are going, what you need to be on top of. I hope this introduction to the syllabus is helpful to you. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, just let me know. Send me an email. That, again, is the most preferable way to communicate with me. You're also welcome to talk with me before or after class. And, of course, we can always set up a meeting. Again, it is my pleasure to serve as your instructor for this semester. I look forward to being with you, and I look forward to getting into the fascinating material that we'll be talking about this semester.